Welcome to Our Hen House. This is Marianne Sullivan.
And this is Jasmine Singer.
And this week, Jasmine will be interviewing biochemist Shannon Falconer. And this interview is going to knock your socks off because Shannon is working on the holy grail of veganism. Her company, Because Animals, is developing cultured meat for dogs and cats. The cat food, which will be the first to reach the market, will be derived from mouse cells. Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's not here, but it's almost here.
We do get into the mouse issue as well, and the mice were all adopted, so they were not killed for this, and they
Of course not.
Right,
of course not,
and they won't have to be used in the future. So we talk about that a lot. So if you're listening to this and your wheels are spinning, I almost said spins are wheeling. If your wheels are spinning or your spins are wheeling, just stay tuned for the interview because we'll unpack that a bit, and it's very exciting.
It's unbelievably exciting.
Is very excited. Yeah, my cat is like, I'm in. I'm ready.
My cats couldn't care less, but I'm really excited. And they will be excited once they smell that mouse meat. God, it sounds so awful to say that.
I know.
I can't believe I get to say that.
Well, yeah. I love this interview. Really, truly. I know we only ever say I love this interview when it's true, by the way. We love our interviews a lot. But Shannon, this is a very special interview. So definitely check it out. If you're in the flock, please be sure to listen to the bonus content as well, because I loved this bonus content with her. And by the way, speaking of which, if you are in the flock, then make sure you're joining our Mighty Networks community. If you don't know what I'm talking about, keep an eye out for a link in your email. And if you are not in the flock, you will be invited to join an aspect of it in a few weeks as well. So it's just a brand new platform that we are using to engage with one another. And I'm really enjoying it. And we're hoping to have one additional element each month of the year, including a podcast that will just be for flock members. So in addition to the bonus content, yeah.
I've been focusing on Mighty Networks a lot. And I think it's really going to be cool.
Yeah. So
I can't wait till everybody's on board.
So we were talking about the cats, but can I tell you about this dog before we get to the end?
Please tell us about the dog because it's all you've been talking about.
I know. And there's so many emotions I'm feeling right now, as you know. But all right. So I'm a host at Weekend Edition at WXXI. You just yawned. Is this story already boring?
It's not boring at all. I'm just, tired.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so I'm going to be putting together one story a week for WXXI in addition to my weekend hosting job. And I made quite a few pitches, and the pitch that they accepted was this animal adoption event. But it wasn't about the animal adoption event. It was about this one particular dog at the animal adoption event. And his name is Dustin. And he has a wonderful, glorious pit bull. He's black. He has 3 legs. And it's a very sad story, as so many do. He is in a very loving foster family right now. And so there is that. I have hope that I hope this story results in him getting adopted, because I certainly cried the whole ride home after meeting him. But the story is really about not only the plight of pit bulls, but the misunderstanding about them, not just in terms of their personalities. Obviously, they have a bad rap. Nobody listening to this is going to be shocked to hear that. Everyone knows it. But also, the story gets into the misunderstandings and misconceptions about breed discrimination laws, which you helped me with that part of the story. So thank you for that.
Oh, yeah. And, breed discrimination laws definitely do exist, but they don't exist in New York State. There's I think there's about, if I recall correctly, 12 or 13 states that have a prohibition on breed discrimination. New York is one of them. So municipalities can't pass a law banning pit bulls. People don't even know that. There have been municipalities that have passed such laws, and they had to be told, no, you can't do that. And the other law, which is really new and which really could make a huge difference for pit bulls if anybody ends up knowing about it, is that insurance companies are not allowed to discriminate against pit bulls in New York State in providing homeowners insurance. And lots of insurance companies may have a whole list of breeds, and pit bulls are always, at the top of that list of dogs who, if they're living in a household, they won't they won't give homeowners insurance to that household, or they'll limit people's ability to get insurance in various ways. And it would apply to landlords too. So it could affect renters as well. It's just really been a real roadblock for a lot of people in being able to get either homeowners insurance or to get a pit bull. So I think it's really exciting that people know more about it. And you found, I think, that even some people who were involved in rescue didn't realize New York had this law, which is really alarming.
Yeah.
It happens too often with animal laws that they get passed and then they don't do anything. They don't get enforced because people don't know about them.
Yeah, I did talk. One of the people I had spoken with for this story didn't realize that and was saying that sometimes people don't. The question was, why do people pass by pit bulls so often at these adoption events? And one of the reasons that she gave was, people say that their insurance company won't cover them. And I found out later that that's not true. And so I circled back and told her that, which is great. But yeah, so that was cool. And I'm just really happy that this story is out there. And I hope I can get more pro-animal stories up. So I will certainly keep you posted. We are going to link to it in the show notes. So do take a look. There's an article. And then at the top, if you want to just listen to the radio version, just listen to that.
And as far as we know, Dustin is still available.
Right. Well, as far as we know, that's right. Yeah. So from cats to dogs to birds, let's talk about what's going on with the egg shortage.
Yeah, well, the thing that made me want to talk about this, I mean, I'm sure all of you have heard about, well, not only the egg shortage, but bird flu. I just heard a news story on NPR about inflation and the price of food going up. And one of the foods they mentioned was eggs, because the price of eggs has gone up dramatically. I think 60%, some people say in some places 100%. Yeah, inflation has had something to do with the increase in the price of eggs. But the really huge issue is bird flu. The birds are dying everywhere. Of course, chickens are birds, and chickens are among the birds that are dying everywhere. And one of the reasons that happens is because it's so contagious, this latest iteration of bird flu. There are constant iterations of bird flu. They go on all the time. But this one is so bad that as soon as one bird in a flock, and these flocks can have thousands and thousands and thousands of birds, as soon as one gets it, they kill them all. And they kill them in the most horrifying ways. I'm not going to go into it, but, it's ventilation shutdown. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this. Ventilation shutdown plus, they call it, because they turn up the heat. They basically cook these birds to death. Like, why does nobody know this? It's a monumental story. This isn't an American story. It's going on all over the world. We're talking about millions and millions and millions of birds. There is no sign that it's slowing down. It's extremely contagious. It's extremely lethal. And if it weren't, lethal in and of itself, the fact that they kill all the birds as soon as someone gets it makes it even more lethal. It's huge in Japan right now. It's all over Europe. It's everywhere. And people just don't seem to know about it. It's unbelievable. This industry is unbelievable. And I don't even, the other thing that's happening is it's killing wild birds. And when the industry talks about it, they tend to blame it on wild birds. And it's probably true that wild birds spread it from place to place. But I bet you anything that it originated in these horrendous factory farms and then spread to wild birds. And then wild birds are able to spread it from place to place, and the wild birds are dying. I just saw a huge number of snow geese just died. Like it's a nightmare that is being not completely, but so largely ignored, except for talking about the price of eggs, as if that's the only problem that is being caused by this. It could make you crazy. And what's really one of the most infuriating facts I read was that the egg industry is actually doing fine, because people have this ridiculous perception that eggs are necessary. And so price does not, that they can't be substituted for. And so price doesn't really affect their salability that much. And the industry is doing great. They're making loads of money because people are spending more to get eggs, which are still, remarkably cheap. So even though they seem very expensive to people because they're usually even cheaper, they're still remarkably cheap food. I saw one of the best things I've seen come out of it is from Just Egg.
Oh my God. I saw this. I love it so much. Yeah.
Yeah. full page ad in the New York Times, and they've also had a bunch of billboards up. Plants don't get the flu. History's worst avian flu outbreak is emptying egg shelves and driving higher prices. Just Egg is made entirely from plants. So we're in stock, free of cholesterol, and ready for that breakfast burrito you've been thinking about all morning.
Love it.
The best eggs don't come from chickens. They come from plants. Yeah, I love it too. How smart of them to take this opportunity to remind people how much better their product is than eating just eggs. Eggs are so disgusting.
When I was a vegetarian for years before I was vegan, like so many of us were. So many of us who've been vegan for a long time were vegetarian first. I think more people are just going vegan now directly from meat eating. But when I was a vegetarian, all I ate was eggs. This reminds me so much of, this is so funny, in the YA book that I wrote that I have to still do edits on. But when my agent read it and gave me feedback, she said, you have to like calm down with the Just Egg references because it seems like this book was like sponsored by Just Egg. And I was like, oh, by the way, I know can you see Murray licking my face right now while I mean, I know you're the only one looking at me, but right now I am holding a dog who is licking my face the entire time I'm talking.
Yes, I can see him because you are on camera for me, not for everybody else. Hi, Murray. Well. Anyway, eggs. Like I was never a huge egg fan. It probably took me longer to catch on to Just Egg because I didn't really miss eggs. Some people really do when they go vegan, but I've become a little too much of a fan. Like I kind of want them every day.
Really? I still like a tofu scramble.
I do too, but Just Egg is so easy.
Yeah, I have to tell you that it's like, I know we've talked about this before, but every now and then it just occurs to me again. Like, I was perfectly fine with our veggie burgers. In fact, some of them really tasted like meat. And then Beyond and Impossible came along and everyone's like, they're veggie burgers now. And I'm like, I've been eating veggie burgers for 20 years. And then it's the same thing with like egg analogs. Like, I was fine, you guys. But we needed to like make something with this big bang in marketing to appeal to everyone else, thinking, oh, there's this new thing now. There's veggie burgers and there's egg analogs.
I will say, like, I love a good tofu scramble, but a good tofu scramble for me requires a lot more than just tofu. Like it needs onions and green peppers. It needs something to zhuzh it up. Whereas Just Egg, right out of the bottle into the pan. And when you think about how gross it is, like eggs are so gross. Think of them with that yellow thing in the middle, and they're all slimy. Oh God.
Okay.
How do people eat them? It's beyond me.
Beyond you. It's just beyond you. Anna, my friend Anna Starosinovskia from Veg News, we like want to create we want to create hyperbole burgers, and because there's Beyond and there's Impossible, and we want to create like otherworldly burgers or like, sensational. Anyway, all right. So let me stop talking. Let's get to the interview because she's much more interesting than me.
Yeah, I know people are really like thinking, when are they going to shut up and let this woman talk? Because I want to know what's going on here. Shannon Falconer is the CEO and co-founder of Because Animals, a biotech startup creating nutritious, sustainable, cultured meat pet food. Shannon holds a master's degree in biochemistry, a Ph.D. in chemical biology, and worked as a postdoctoral research fellow at Stanford University prior to founding Because Animals. Shannon has spent decades volunteering in the animal rescue community and is a fur mom to her amazing rescue dog, Nori. She will be joining Jasmine right after this. Social media has become such an important part of almost all of our lives. So please make our hen house part of that social media experience for you. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram. We try to post some news stories to help you keep up to date on what's happening in the world for animals. You can also find us online, of course, on our website, ourhenhouse.org, or you can email us. If you have some concerns or questions or something you'd like us to discuss on the podcast, let us know. info@ourhenhouse.org.
Welcome to our hen house, Shannon.
Thanks, Jasmine. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm very happy to talk to you. And did you say you're in Austria right now?
I am, yes. We have a lab based in Vienna, which is where I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow, very interesting. So excited to dig in here. Let's just start, if it's okay, with you telling us what Because Animals is and what products it is working on producing.
Yes, of course. So Because Animals is a company making cultured meat specifically for pet food. And we started with making cultured mouse for cats, mouse being the ancestral diet of the cat. So although people are, of course, used to feeding their cats and dogs, but chicken, beef, seafood, these are actually the main allergens for our cats and dogs, and of course, they're included in pet food because those are part of what comes out of the human food supply chain. But in making cultured meat, we really saw this as an opportunity to grow the protein source and fat source that's most evolutionarily appropriate for our pets. Hence, why we're focusing right now on mouse, and then the next will be duck for dogs.
Amazing. When can my cat get a sample of the mouse? Oh, wait, I was supposed to ease into that question. I wasn't supposed to just ask at the beginning. But it's like you're saving all vegans who have cats and have these horrible, ethical objections. That's amazing. You're really solving that problem.
Yes, we are. We are definitely. That's what I'm doing day in, day out, working on solving that problem. So for us, we are working very aggressively to have a product available for consumers in Q2 of 2024.
Oh, so great. So cool. And we just had Andrew Knight on our hen house talking about some really cool studies that have come out recently about dogs and cats and veganism. And obviously, we've long known that dogs aren't obligate carnivores, but I think there's been some confusion around cats specifically. So we have been waiting on the edge of our seat. And although my cat's favorite food is Impossible Burger, which is not something I feed her on purpose, but anytime it's in the house, wherever she is, she's like, "Arr!" And she goes to wherever.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
So what specific types of foods are you producing for dogs and cats? And why did you choose these as opposed to the meats more commonly found in standard pet food? Why mouse and why duck?
What we're really focusing on right now is, for cats, feral cats, for example, when cats evolved eating mice and small birds and insects. And by and large, most cats that are feral, that's what they still eat if they're not living in a feral colony that's tended to by a human, right? Feeding them conventional commercial pet food. So we decided that, of course, mouse-based cat food does not currently exist on the market. But the reason for that is not because it's not a good food for them, especially given that that's what our cats evolved eating. It's because the supply chain for the human food industry focuses on meat such as chicken and beef and various types of fish. And pet food is an industry that is basically uses those components of the human food supply chain that are no longer fit for human consumption. So the vast majority of meat, the chicken, beef, various fish, that's found in pet food is made from either or both the 50% of the animal that humans don't want to eat, as well as what are referred to as fallen animals. These are animals that die in transit due to dehydration, suffocation. And if an animal dies before it is slaughtered, it cannot be sold into the human food supply chain. All of this, basically, this remnants or these components of the slaughtered animals, they more or less are sort of heaped together and sent to something called a rendering facility. By the time they make it to this rendering facility, this flesh is very, very heavily contaminated. And so at the rendering facility, it's subjected to very, very high heats and high pressures in order to sterilize this otherwise heavily contaminated meat. And in the sterilization process, a lot of those essential nutrients that cats and dogs both require that they would otherwise get from the meat, many of those essential nutrients are lost. So taurine, for example, is one of them, right? So taurine, a very, very water-soluble amino acid, it's largely lost in that rendering process. And so this is also why when you look at your ingredient label for your cat's food, you will see a long list of vitamins, minerals, supplements that are added back to the cat food. This would be referred to in the industry as the premix. So these are those essential nutrients, and taurine is in there. And when it's actually added to commercial pet food, the irony is that the taurine, that essential nutrient that everybody thinks about when they think cats cannot be vegan because they go blind, which is absolutely the case if they are not getting all of the nutrients they need, that taurine that goes back into commercial pet food, it's actually largely, it's a synthetic form of taurine. So most of those essential nutrients that cats need in the wild that come from meat, when they are being fed a commercial diet, those nutrients are largely there from a synthetic source anyway. The meat itself is really what the meat is providing in terms of nutrients. It's providing protein, but as for those other core components like vitamin D, arachidonic acid, various B vitamins, and of course, as I mentioned, taurine, those are added back in synthetic form. So with our cultured meat, what we're able to do, we focus on mouse as opposed to chicken or beef. Although consumers are used to seeing those ingredients, they are known medically to be the main allergens for cats and dogs. So the first thing that a veterinarian will do if a client or a patient brings their cat or dog to the vet, say, for example, with some kind of dermatological issue or gastrointestinal issue that they suspect is related to some kind of an allergen, is to swap out the protein source. This will often be a protein source that is less common, so certainly not chicken. And it actually is often in certain hypoallergenic diets. It's also even soy protein. So in making cultured meat, because we don't, there was no reason necessarily to focus on chicken or beef, especially given what we know in that, this is problematic for a number of cats and dogs, we decided that we would focus on mouse because this is the native prey diet of cats. For dogs, sort of following that similar thread of logic, I suppose, we initially thought, okay, a native prey source, which might be rabbit or duck, they tend to eat a wider variety of things, including things that are not meat, than cats. So we have a bit more flexibility with dogs. But for cats, we really wanted to focus on mouse.
Besides Impossible Burgers. I get it. That's so interesting. So are animals harmed in the production of these products?
When we initially for example, mouse, when we take an initial biopsy or a sample of tissue from a mouse, which is what we did with the cell line that we're using for our mouse, we basically adopted 3 mice that would have otherwise been used for research purposes. So we adopted them.
Wow.
And they lived out their long, happy, healthy life in a plush mouse house. And one of our scientific director in her home, they lived a long life. They lived almost 2 years, which is actually quite a long time for these particular mice. We took some tissue sample from their ears. And so sort of like a ear piercing, we did have them anesthetized. So, they were not awake when they had this piercing, and then they were given painkillers when they woke up. It's something that it wouldn't have been comfortable if they were awake, but we did minimize that as much as we could. But I think importantly, we'll never have to go back to any mice again. So that tissue then serves as sort of the basis for all of the cultured mouse that we will grow henceforth. So depending on the types of cell lines that people use when they're making cultured meat, there are definitely opportunities and ways to grow cultured meat whereby you take a sample from an animal and then you never go back to that animal again. Mm-hmm. That's the route that we're going.
So taking into account that most of our listeners aren't scientists, so I can think of a few, can you walk us through the process for all this, how all this happens? So you get the sample and then what?
So in order to never go back to an animal again, cells need to basically be able to continue to grow forever, indefinitely. And there are two ways to achieve this. One is folks can either work with, when I say folks, I mean companies working in cultured meat, for example, can either work with something called an immortalized cell line, right? So this immortalized cell line, these cells do continue to grow indefinitely. In the industry, this is actually what most cultured meat companies are working with. Definitely not all, but most. And so what happens in order to create this immortalized cell line is that there's a mutation that occurs because our cells naturally, they don't continue to grow forever and indefinitely, right? Our cells senesce or they die. So in order to basically make cells continue to grow this way, they have to have a mutation in a gene. By definition, if there's a mutation in a gene that allows a cell to continue to grow indefinitely, if that mutation existed inside of a body, that would be considered cancer, right? You have a really aggressive a cancerous growth or something, a cell that's now started to grow very, very aggressively and uncontrolled. I will say that nobody has ever gotten cancer from eating cancerous cell lines. And so scientifically, we don't believe that happens, right? This is not something that can happen. For us, though, because animals, in any case, we do see this as being probably a pretty big stumbling block for a lot of consumers, despite the fact that it is absolutely the case that when consumers are eating, slaughtered animals from slaughterhouses or farms or whatever, for sure, at times they will be eating cancerous cells, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that that animal had cancer, sort of this rampant growth of a tumor or something. Our cells, for all of us and any of us, at any given moment, we have sort of these mutations, and then our bodies will clear them. But the point is, it is absolutely the case that people, when they're eating meat, they are eating cancerous tissue to various degrees. But people don't really know this and they don't really think about it. And we at Because Animals decided that this was going to be possibly a big marketing challenge. So we are not using any cell lines that could ever be considered cancerous. So we are not using immortalized cell lines. We are not using any cell lines that had mutations in them, whether or not they occurred spontaneously or they were directed. We just don't use them. So instead, we're using something called a pluripotent stem cell. And pluripotent stem cells are basically in any body, there's a single population of cells that continue to grow indefinitely, which are these pluripotent stem cells, until those pluripotent stem cells start to become a certain type of cell. So, we all start with sort of these cells that they have the capability to turn into anything. They can turn into heart cells, muscle cells, skin cells, fat cells. And so these are the cells that we are working with, the stem cells, and we grow them up. And then from there, we then create an environment whereby these cells can turn into the tissue type that we're interested in. So for us, we're very focused right now on animal fat, because that is such a vital nutrient for cats in particular. Basically, after obtaining the cells from the animal, and specifically from there, we're using stem cells. We then grow them in something called a bioreactor. And basically, bioreactor is sort of a complicated term for, basically, it's just a vessel that holds a blend of nutrients. And if we think about, our body as a vessel that just has, that is mostly liquid. And so there's a vessel that has mostly liquid and it's running across these cells. We control for temperature and gas exchange, and the cells, they grow in a way that's very, very similar to how cells would grow in a body, because they're being fed all of the nutrients that they would be fed inside of a body, and they grow, and then we harvest that material. And I'll say that, this idea of growing cells in a bioreactor, I mean, we've been doing this as a society for a long time. Well, maybe not in relative terms, not a long time. But for example, growing yeast for beer, these yeast cells are grown inside of a bioreactor. Growing bacterial cells for probiotics, these bacterial cells are grown inside of a bioreactor. And so now we're applying the use of bioreactors to grow animal cells. And from there, we know genetically this is meat. We're, of course, just generating that meat in an alternative way. It's not a meat alternative, right? Cultured meat is not a meat alternative. It's meat. We're just growing it in a way that is different from conventional raising and slaughtering of animals.
Yeah, I have been waiting for this day for so long. I remember in 2010 on our hen house, interviewing Peter Singer about what is the future. And he said, and by the way, no relation to me, though I do call him dad. I'm not sure he appreciates it. But he said, cultivated meat. I don't know if he used those words. He might have said lab grown meat at the time. Here we are. And I have been working in veganism for long enough that on one hand, I'm I'm so excited that we're here. And on the other, I am worried about the marketing situation we're going to be in, the PR situation that we're going to be in. And you mentioned that briefly. Can you speak a little bit more about that and how you think we're going to deal with this sort of collective ew factor?
I don't know how we're going to deal with it.
Fair.
In short, I know, at least I have an idea as to how we're going to deal with it at Because Animals, which is that we are basically going to say, look, this is actually, in many respects, this meat is more pristine than what people would be getting from an animal because we don't have those spontaneous mutations or mutants. And we do have a very, very homogeneous population of cells that has a very, very, in terms of its cell line, the genetic material is, well, as I say, it's very stable. And so versus what you're getting from an animal, which is, you are at any given time, you would be eating, consuming cancerous cells. But furthermore, the important thing to think about is that, of course, the way that meat is produced conventionally is that these animals are raised in, they are raised in basically manure, right? And then they're slaughtered. And it has been shown that, in different studies, where, at a grocery store, okay, take 1,000 samples or samples of 1,000 different types of meat before it's cooked, and then try to culture out anything that might be on that meat. And in 100% of cases, the resulting bacteria is, they're fecal bacteria. And this is no big surprise, right? Because of course, as these animals are raised in their own feces, this is going to arise, and this is exactly why meat has to be cooked. Because if you don't cook it, the chances of getting E. coli or salmonella are pretty good. And that's because those are fecal bacteria. So in our instance, when we're growing cultured meat, there's no manure, there's no fecal matter around, right? We grow it in a way that's very, very clean. And this idea of, but I don't want to eat something that's grown inside of a lab. Well, in reality, we're not, once we get towards production, commercial production, we're not actually growing this in a lab. We're producing it in a production facility, in the same kind of production facility that grain is produced in, that milk is produced in, that any product that you buy from a grocery store is produced in. So I think people have this impression that that the food they eat is, quote unquote, very, very natural. When in reality, as soon as you step away from the fruit and vegetable section, I think we really need to reconsider what we define as being natural.
Yeah. And I sometimes worry too about what in the fruit and vegetable section, what's actually on them, what's on the fruit and vegetables. Not that I really care that much about that, but we have genetically manipulated everything. So what kind of safety testing is there to make sure these products are safe for animals? Do you actually test on animals?
We haven't tested on animals. I mean, certainly our cats. We've offered cats the mouse meat to see if they like it, and they do. We haven't done any sort of standard typical safety testing on animals, largely because we're sort of applying some common sense here and saying, okay, the types of testing that we're doing is, cell line stability, something referred to as karyotyping, ensuring that these cell lines are not cancerous cell lines. There are no abnormalities with our cell lines. Okay, so those things are check, great. So genetically, this would just be it is identical. It is meat, animal meat. And then the inputs, well, when we grow the cells and we feed them very, very defined ingredients. So we know exactly, okay, we're feeding them vitamins, minerals, amino acids. These are all things that you could actually, you could buy any of these at a health food store, for instance, right? So these are just nutrients that any kind of cell needs to grow. And then in the end, we're looking at, okay, what is the output? Are these cells producing anything in terms of toxic metabolites? And in reality,